Noting the time at 7:30 in the presence of a quorum, I now call the Acton Finance Committee to order. And the first item I'd like to do is allow Mary Ann the microphone here for a couple of seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So some of you know is that I am retiring soon, and so the soon is right around the corner, which I announced unofficially about 3 years ago, and now it's August of 2025, and I don't have any idea where these 3 years went. I am happy on one hand to take like that next road in life, and super sad because it's probably one of the best places I've worked these past 17 years. I came from the Commonwealth and worked for the Commonwealth for about 21 years. So thank you to all of you. It's been wonderful. And doing my best to have a smooth transition. So the employees, the town does not see any break in service. So to my left is Ellie Anderson, who you have come to know, presenting the quarterly reports to you and also other activities. She is currently the budget manager, extremely capable, and she will be the new FinCom liaison. And so we are double dutying for now over the next, like, 2 or 3 FinCom meetings. And we'll be sharing notes, and then there'll be a smooth transition for all of you, so you don't skip a beat. So thank you so, so much. I can't believe I'm at a point where I'm in meetings now, and people say, hey, when's the next meeting? And I think, oh my goodness, I am not going to be here for that next meeting. I never in a million years thought I would ever be old enough to be old enough to retire, so it's scaring the heck out of me. But we'll see how I do, and thank you so, so much. It's been really so much fun. I will be here for the July 22nd and the August, I think one of the August meetings. My planned retirement is on or around August 14th, but we also, John is working with the Collins Center to make it as fair and impartial as possible for my replacement. So he's working with them currently for my replacement. So welcome, Ellie, and she's going to do great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. You've been very helpful to me and my limited time in the committee. I'm sure other people would like to, maybe, you look like you want to say something, Jason?
Just make sure you let us know which meeting's your last so that we can make sure to give you a proper send-off. Welcome, Ellie, but we're definitely going to make sure to mark the occasion, Mary Ann, on the joyousness of retirement.
Well, I'm going to start with, everything's a little bit delayed. I'm going to delay my conversation on capital projects to the next meeting. So starting with public comment, I'll see if there's anybody that would like to say anything. Big crowd. Yes. Noticing that there is nobody going for public comments, I will continue on. Approval of minutes. The minutes for our last meeting were received today, so I will review and send around for comments. I don't know if there's any other minutes to approve.
No, but I believe we're waiting on a couple. I believe we're expecting the final slate soon.
Thank you.
And those will be coming to Scott and CCing Jason. So what Jason is mentioning is that he was missing about 4 or so meeting minutes from the former treasurer collector. So I was able to retrieve those minutes and will forward those to Scott so that you can vote on those as well. So Jason and I went through the ones that the FinCom had not voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And move on. So the topic today is DPW project discussion, basically continuation. I just did one slide, just listing the items that we discussed as scenarios last week and just kind of looking at it from my perspective. kind of like, I think of it as a couple buckets. We're looking to try to find a way to minimize tax impact, trying to understand what is really needed, and trying to figure out how to do this, how to resolve the issue. Really, this, in my mind, there's two issues, but resolve issues that need to be resolved without having it take too long. So I have this as kind of a marker to just open discussion if anybody wants to start discussing. Hopefully we have discussion, otherwise a very quick meeting.
Maybe you should start with Greg.
Yeah, let's start with Greg and see how, all right, go ahead, Greg.
Sure. If you want, I have PowerPoint, or I can do this a cappella.
Yeah, go to your deck.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing so you can share.
If you stop sharing, I will start sharing. And part of the reason I put this in PowerPoint is basically to make sure that I was covering key points in as few words as possible. So
Hit F5, put it in slideshow mode.
I'm going to have to, oh, good point. There you go. Thank you. So one of the things that we were accused of back in April is we were the ones who were sharing opinion and the other side was sharing facts. I don't believe that is true. I believe we both had facts that are displayed. We were interpreting them differently, but nevertheless, one of the facts is that there was a town election and no got 56.1% of the vote. On the other hand, another fact is at town meeting, a revised Article 7 passed that says there's going to be about $150,000 spent to keep this a discussion point that we're going to have in the coming year. So somewhere between these two facts, we're going to have to come up with a solution. And I think Scott's range of options, I concur with it. It is a good framing of the issue. Now, I believe, and I know we've changed at least one member since April with one retirement and one new appointment, but I think based on what we've heard so far, the Finance Committee is still a little cautious when it comes to any long-term debt issue. I don't think we've shifted our position on that in the last several months. And I think going forward, as we look at what we do from here, we will continue to be the cautious voice in this ongoing discussion. One of the things that has changed, and we talked about this slightly at last meeting, is that we in April were concerned about the recent tariffs that were hiked to 25% on April 2nd. Well, on June the 4th, the steel and aluminum tariffs were hiked to 50%. And it's worth noting that these are Section 232 tariffs, which means they are not like the reciprocal tariffs that are getting all the publicity in the news these days about, South Korea or Japan or whatever. It turns out the steel and aluminum tariffs were done under a different authorization, and they jumped, but they haven't been, quote, bargaining positions. Nobody is asking for somebody to come in and promise to build a new steel mill and the tariffs will go down. These tariffs are up and have not fluctuated. And so, again, as we go forward, this is going to be a reality that everybody's going to have to deal with, no matter what their opinion is. One of the things that I think we have voiced, although I don't think we voted on it yet, is that the proposal that was made back in April for a 43,056 square foot DPW building, we still don't think it is cost justified. I still don't think it's cost justified. Again, I didn't think it in April. I don't think it now. I believe, though, the few caveats that I've heard discussed is that there is some agreement that perhaps the staffing solutions, like the locker rooms for men and women, are a viable or a reasonable issue that needs to be addressed. However, the vehicle storage or the existing garage is a separate issue. But by and large, I still think that there's no way you can invent a productivity increase to justify anything approaching 2.1 million a year, even if it's going to be lower than that going forward. Then yesterday, I got from the assistant town manager 3 documents that I forwarded to everyone. I've spent the weekend trying to read through them. Some of that is a little difficult, particularly the next one. But one of the interesting things that popped up to me in 2020 hindsight, and I have to confess, we benefit from 2020 hindsight, is that the old 2013 space needs study was pretty spot on. And interestingly enough, it said, yeah, we're going to need a new DPW building long term, but you know what? There's a way to do this with improvements, not wholesale replacement. And they had some specific suggestions back then. And I think it is worth going back and reading the 2013 Space Needs Study, because I think it provides us with a viable framework that says, look, yes, we know we need to replace the DPW building, but there are other ways to do it. And oh, by the way, we identified them way back in 2013. And we think we should get back on course to what it was suggesting at the time and take a more incremental approach, more fiscally responsible approach. And we think that's a viable one in 2025, 2026, whenever. The hard to read content that I shared with everybody yesterday is the schematic design. And part of that is just because the typeface is so small. But interestingly enough, it also basically backed up the space study by basically saying, look, we could solve some of the problem soon. We could deal with other upgrades down the road. We still need a cost-effective model that the community will support. And interestingly enough, buried in all of those footnotes and small print is something that I think we can go back to our counterparts on the select board and say, look, this is a reasonable approach. It was a reasonable approach. If we get back to that, we are more likely to reach a consensus than we were a year ago. Now, the last study that I shared yesterday was the facility study. And it, interestingly enough, said, yeah, we're probably going to need a new DPW building. But there was absolutely no discussion of what it might cost. And so I think one of the things that we will do ourselves a favor is to acknowledge, yes, something needs to be done. We're all on board with that. What we're really arguing over is the cost. And that reflects both the results of the town election as well as the poll that was conducted at town meeting. And the poll at town meeting was very clear. Yeah, there's probably a need to improve the facility and working conditions. Yep. but cost is the big, big problem. So that's one of the reasons why I happen to be in favor of one of the items on Scott's list, which is the minimum viable project approach. And you can call it something different. I'm not, it doesn't have to be MVP. I'm, maybe I'm too much a marketing guy, so I apologize for that. But again, just to restate things that I said at the last meeting, but they're worth restating. I've looked at communities with similar populations and frankly, even more approved road miles. And they used the same architect that we used, and they came up with a smaller building that cost less. Now, part of it is it costs less because it was built back in 2021. But one of the questions that was asked 2 weeks ago was, yeah, but do they deal with the same amount of snow that we have? And yeah, the Cape can be a little different weather-wise than Acton, but interestingly enough, in talking with them again this week, they plow sand after nor'easters. We don't do that. So yeah, it's different, but they have a hardworking DPW department too, and they do some things that even we don't have to deal with. So again, the fact that they can build a smaller facility that cost a lot less money to build, even 4 years ago, and yeah, there's been inflation, but do the math, and you can add 5 or 6% a year, and you still don't get to anywhere close to what the price tag we saw this spring. And I also mentioned that there are a couple of other towns that we should look at to get a ballpark feel for what can be done for less money. And it's also done, interestingly enough, with smaller square footages. And yes, they were done a few years ago. And yes, one has run into cost overruns, which is a lesson that we should learn from. But overall, I think this would give us an approach that I think all of us could support.
Thank you, Greg.
Any questions?
I have a couple quick, I just want to make a statement first, and that is that this is a presentation that you put together. It wasn't reviewed by the entire committee, signed off on by the entire committee, and because and granted, I'm sure a lot of people have similar thoughts, but I just want to make sure from a perception standpoint that this is your opinion at this point.
This is my opinion, yes. Yeah. It's and frankly, part of this wasn't built until this afternoon, and it wasn't built until after I got the documents that I got from the assistant town manager. Although some of the slides, frankly, are ones that we used in the video presentation that was aired on ActonTV that got taken down. Some of the early slides about what this committee had wrestled with and thought about and why we had come out against question one or not supporting question one is ground that we covered in April. But yeah, it was all new. I did not run this by anybody. Nobody saw it until today.
One other point, I'd like to get everybody have a chance to speak independently with their own thoughts rather than just diving into commentary on what your presentation was. I want to hold those comments, let people have a chance to speak because somebody might have a completely contrarian view and give them a chance to talk, and then we can discuss like as a group, maybe opinions. Does that make sense? Everybody a chance to share their own thoughts, and we can come back and if you have thoughts for Greg, just write them down and we'll come back to Greg. And just I want to give other people a chance to talk, that's all. Roland?
I just had a question on one slide was, how many full-time employees were there? Did you have on your slide? I think you had on the second slide. You said 23.1? 34.1.
We have 34 in the DPW department according to the budget document that was given to us earlier this year.
Thanks. So, one thing that I saw in the original documents that Greg did send out was that at one point the town was looking at combining what used to be Dean Charter's old role, municipal properties, DPW, and I think it was another department in that one building, have all the offices, better synergy. And that was with you build that thing in the front and move where the current offices are into the new building part, which makes a lot of sense.
Roland, can you speak up? I can't hear you.
The document that showed that the town should put the municipal properties and DPW and whatever the other third department was into that one building, into the new add-on, I'll say, to the front, and put the offices in there, and you could easily build out locker rooms in that part of the building and then convert the back part where you vacate now into storage and vehicle storage and things like that. Makes perfect sense to me. They gotta get the exterminator in here, just killed a bug. So, they had that option, they knew that viability, or they knew that recommendation back in 2013. We're now in 2025, and in that time, the town has grown again. So, it's kind of derelict on the powers to be at that time. They did nothing about it, right? They didn't address any of the other issues that had the building with ventilation and things like that. So that's nothing new. I agree, yeah, our employees need a safe working environment. And one of my other thoughts was instead of building the wash bay, if you're gonna build a new building, you don't need to put the wash bay in today or tomorrow when they're building it. You can knock that off and do that later on at another point in time as funds become available. My other thought is to build a smaller garage and build another garage that you put the equipment that you don't use in that season. You're not gonna be using lawnmowers and street sweepers in the middle of winter. Those come out in the spring. So, and then you're not gonna be using that 1980s plow truck, which should be, in my opinion, getting rid of. And the equipment that you use in the winter, you're not gonna use in the summer. So there are ways that I think you can build a smaller building and better utilize other storages. And I still believe that we don't need the admin pieces in that building at all. And we should do something else.
Jason?
Mr. Chairman, were you asking for us to respond tonight, or were you asking for us to send an email to Greg with our responses?
I think it'd be appropriate to respond tonight to Greg. I just want to give people a chance, because, going through a 10-slide presentation, the tendency would be to just focus 20 minutes on that, and it's going to bury everybody's independent thought. I just want people to speak openly and freely, that we can come back to Greg's presentation.
So I would comment on that, echoing what Mr. Borden said. I think it can be summed up a little more quickly in the sense of saying that, and I said this last time, I do not want our approach to this to be to make the perfection the enemy of the good. I don't like the concept of calling it a minimum viable project, because the word minimum sounds negative to me. I think it is, taking a page from our school district that says meet them where they are. Well, I want us to meet the needs where they are. And if there is a health need for those employees that are there 9 to 5, 5 days a week, yes, by all means, let's solve that problem. And that building plan from 13 years ago, 12 years ago, met the need. Unfortunately, we have a member of the select board who used very colorful language and I'm guilty of that myself on numerous occasions, used very colorful language to dismiss that plan. That mentality needs to be changed. We're all pulling for the health and safety of our employees. We're also pulling for not wasting money. So let's please stop having an ask for everything that you could possibly need. And if you don't get that, to then hijack the health and safety of our employees seems morally bankrupt to me. So come forward with that plan for the small building that addresses the immediate need. Anything more than that, and you are trying to play a politics game where you're using one thing and conflating it so that you can try and get more. Don't do that. That's part of our job, is to make sure that we don't allow that to happen. So also, I understand the concept of building a new building for storage. We've already got 2 buildings. There's at least 2 buildings that can store stuff. There's actually a 3rd shed around, even closer to the dump site. We have plenty of space for storing vehicles. It's when we start storing these vehicles, demanding that we store these vehicles in a heated chamber, that I start to go, okay, now we're getting fancy. And we need to not get fancy when we're throwing around other people's money.
Christie?
I'm not sure that the building is too large as designed. I would love to see it staged in the fix where the people work part, because I can't afford it all right now. And then, once we've recovered some from everything, fix the storage part. What I don't understand is that I know you have asked for data about what our foreseen storage needs are. Have you heard that?
I have not, that's why I still have it listed as an open item.
Okay, I don't understand how we can be expected to provide good analysis and good recommendation based on data that someone seems reluctant or just not prioritizing giving us. I find that extremely frustrating.
Yeah, I'm looking, my specific ask is a analysis for equipment needs, assuming the building was empty, and we were rebuying everything, assuming the same number of streets, same number of sidewalks, same number of staffing, and the same service levels that are currently demanded by the town. So, and I understand the need for redundancy in vehicles, and just like we have 3 ambulances and we use 2, but if 2 die, 1 dies, we have a spare. I understand the need for redundancy, but I'm looking for what is the equipment that we have to meet the service standards, and then I would expect that there would be room to store redundant vehicles if we need like an extra something or other. But I would think it wouldn't take long to do that.
No,
I don't have it yet, though.
I am probably the most open person on this committee to the idea of the DPW project in more of the form it's been defined, as much as I cannot afford it in my personal wallet. But I'm extremely disappointed that we're not getting the information that I believe you requested a month and a half ago or something, like a good while ago.
Yes.
And I just want to voice my extreme frustration on that. It's getting harder and harder for me to take part in a conversation that feels so very one-sided.
Corinne?
I'm wondering, Greg, if you have been able to get any, how do we figure out what the differences are between the building that Wesson and Sampson proposed here versus the one, is it in Yarmouth, that's much less expensive? Like, we could, like, actually figure out what's the difference between these buildings that makes the, because it's not just inflation. Like, what if they built that exact same building here? How much would it cost today? I don't think. That's one question I had. The other question, or it's just a suggestion, is maybe we should get the question 1 video, but put back up on ActonTV so that it's there as a reference for people. Because all of the select board stuff is all still up. But if people ever want it, he's saying, there's information in there that people can't access anymore.
Give me another meeting or 2 to get a response back from the Attorney General, please.
But it's after the fact. It won't affect any ballot questions or anything like that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say, Jason, is the select board member used the same term as the president used today on live TV, so I guess it's okay to use it.
I'm trying to do better, sir.
All right. So I was on this committee when these studies were done. And it was the precursor to a committee which I also served on, which was a joint capital planning committee between the town and the school district. And we spent a lot of time visiting facilities, and there were two critical needs established. This was in 2016. Two critical needs established. The first was a new Gates Douglas replacement building and a North Acton fire station. The third need that was identified but not pursued was a DPW building. So what you had was two studies that one, you had somebody go through and assess the condition of the building, period. And the second one that then went through and assessed the space needs. So the one Greg is talking about is the second of the two. So the DPW building and the condition of the building, I think they pegged the replacement cost at around $6 million at the time, as is. But said if you want to keep the one you have, it was about $1 million in improvements that would need to be done. That would not have accomplished what was needed. The space needs study pointed that out. The air quality in the office section was poor, and we needed more vehicle storage. Now, they actually only recommended 3,600 square feet of office. It's a separate building, and another 3,600 square feet of kind of three-sided vehicle storage.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
In that analysis, which I have not read through, but you've read through a couple times and were there in person, did they do an equipment analysis? Or did they just decide that the building had to be this size?
They do some schematics of equipment. Now, the vehicle storage they were talking about was similar to what we have at the public safety building, okay? It had a roof, it had walls, it had a floor, but it was open. So you don't have to maneuver much, you just back them in and pull them out. I don't know, I would love to know the size of the fleet in 2015 to know if we're talking apples to apples or whether our fleet was much smaller. But be that as it may, if you take that same concept and explode it out in today's, let's say we did a 5,000 square foot office and a 30,000 square foot vehicle storage building. I've gone on the internet, which of course you can get reliable information from. But from Autodesk and looking at commercial construction costs, you know, the 5,000 square foot office, construction-wise, would cost a little over $2 million. A 30,000 square foot warehouse, which is the most applicable thing, would probably cost you about 6 or 7. Now, that's just construction, because you're going to have a lot of specialized equipment that also would go into this thing. But if that's the need we have for space, then that's a rough idea of what it would cost to just provide a roof over their heads. If we are curious what a 30,000 square foot building would cost in today's dollars, the new Subaru dealer that's being built in Nagog is a 30,000 square foot building. So we could either ask them, or they probably file permits, with their construction costs. So we get an estimate of what a 30,000 square foot, and I think it's concrete tilt-up construction would cost in Acton today. Beyond that, the only thing I'd say is my crude calculations are a far cry from $40 million. So somehow I think we have to figure out how you get from one point to the other.
All right, so, go ahead, Christie.
I know I've expressed a lot of frustration through this. We shouldn't have to be trying to figure this out. It's, ideally, we would have faith that the information given to us was the best plan, or we would have been presented with a few options that we could have discussed. I'm a little stuck on the where do we go from here? A problem in that we don't have the funds to get any sort of design going, so what can we say that will get the select board to listen to the idea of possibly doing this differently? Because we can all come up with a bunch of reasons, and I'm sure they can come up with a bunch of reasons to ignore us because we don't know what's going on, which is kind of true, but at the same time, what they're telling us is sort of unfathomable from what we can see fairly readily. So I would just love for us to have some sort of an idea about how to communicate this better.
Jason?
2 points. One, that is exactly what we tried to do with the 2 listening sessions last year. And again, we were told, that's your opinion, we'll let the voters speak. The voters have spoken, they should listen. Secondly, they, meaning the select board, should listen. Secondly, you triggered something in my memory that I want to make sure that I comment on. The $150,000 that was spent, or that was appropriated to keep this building plan alive. I believe we spoke from the floor, from the stage, saying we would love that money to come up with the next best plan. I would hate for that $150,000 to merely be marketing money to try and regurgitate a plan that has already been rejected by the voters. So to your direct question, how do we convince the select board that this is not a good idea? We do that by explaining, here's a plan for a building that's $10 million, not 40. Here's another building in town that's about the same size that is X millions of dollars. And I'm pretty damn sure that that X is going to be significantly less than $40 million. If this comes up again, if they bring the exact same plan back again, that would be horrifying, because we have been consistent in what we've said, that they need to address needs and not wants. When the taxpayers were presented with a plan, the taxpayers rejected it. They need to listen to the taxpayers. Unfortunately, it was an uncontested election last time around, if I understand correctly. Uncontested elections are terrible. This is exactly the type of thing that allows for myopic viewing of what they think the taxpayer can mean. The taxpayer spoke. We do not want this building. Come up with a better plan. It should be that simple. In the meantime, since we are not a political body, we are an appointed body, all we can do is hold up facts. This is what a building in 2013 could have done for us. This is what that building costs today. This is what another building similar to that built in Acton costs today. If they won't listen, shame them until they do.
I just want to say a couple things. There's a lot of things that were said here that I just want to put my own words to them. I think that when we listened to the taxpayers and I re-listened to that town meeting, the two loudest voices were, didn't want to spend the money, and the other voice was, we got to take care of the staff. And my own personal take is, I don't want to spend any more money designing buildings. So that's why I look back to the 2013 design that had been mapped out and designed and planned out because it had a separate staffing space. Go ahead, Jason.
I respect where you're coming from, but no, nobody's going to take a schematic from 2013 and put it in implementation. For us to build the right-size building, we are unfortunately going to have to go through another 60% schematic, which is going to cost a significant amount of money, and I apologize for that, but it is so much better for us to say, this is the size building you should build. We will fund the funding for this now that you understand the size building that we're prepared to support, rather than what happened last time, which was we'd like 1.2 million or whatever it was for discovery, for coming forward with a plan. They came forward with a plan. They came forward with the wrong plan. If they go back now, if they understand now that we're looking for, whether it be called the minimum viable plan, or whether we call it the needs-only plan, or whether it be called the, Dean Charter's most unhappy solution to get us through the next 10 years, call it what you want. But once we've identified that size scope, we are unfortunately going to have to go through another round of money. And that's fine, because it is better to spend that $800,000 than to say, well, we spent 1.2 million, so we just might as well make a $40 million mistake.
I understand that no matter what is done, that there's money that has to be spent on plans. But the reason why, myself personally, I was looking at the 2013 plan was that I looked at that as it could be potentially done as two projects. You solve the staffing problem immediately, and the benefit of that is that when the original plan was presented, then revised and presented to town meeting, one of the issues is that they were rebuilding everything so that they had to shuffle equipment around and everything had to be moved and everything was in the way. My thought is that if the building for staff was built kind of where they park their cars right now, it wouldn't interfere with anything. It could just be built, then they could move in, and then we could make a needs analysis on, by then we should have the equipment study, and we'd be able to make a needs analysis on what equipment needs to be stored, where it needs to be stored, how it needs to be stored, and we can have that whole figuring out phase after that. But we could, I think, the entire process through this, the last year up until this point in time, Finance Committee and the Select Board have both agreed unanimously that we want to take care of the staff. And we were just saying as a Finance Committee that there are more than one ways of solving the staffing solution. There is what I just mentioned now, building a building. There is also places that can be purchased, places that can be rented, but there is no independent, separate staffing analysis that anybody can put their hands on because the whole project is commingled. So I'm saying that I would like to look at a scenario of some 2013 version where a building is looked at as a scenario for the staff, and then the storage is looked at separately. But then I want to compare that scenario to what are the other alternatives for the staff, just so the taxpayers are aware. So you can either build this building for them, or you could put them here or here, and here's the cost differential, estimated. Obviously, we wouldn't have exact costs, but I think that's what we need to present as scenario, because I feel like the taxpayers need to understand that there are multiple ways of solving the staffing solution other than building one massive building that has everything in it. Any other thoughts from anybody? Steve?
I was just going to make a comment on buying an existing property, if you want to have that comment now. The old Saab dealer at the far end of town, I know, was a site that was leased under evaluation by the town as the temporary DPW building. You know, because the suggestion we made is if you could move your operations temporarily somewhere else, you could speed up the whole construction cycle. I know they looked at it. I don't know what they concluded as to its viability. It has existing office space and it has existing automotive repair facilities. It's currently owned by the old Village Automotive, so it's not owned by McGovern. It's currently used by McGovern to store excess inventory from the Subaru dealer. That need was going away soon. You know, so you're going to have, yeah, it's an older building, and I don't know what kind of shape it's in, but it has some of the facilities we're looking for. It's probably going to be available. I think it's currently assessed under $3 million. What would it cost to upgrade it to be a permanent home rather than a temporary home? I'd love to know the answer to that.
Any other comments from anybody on this? All right. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I think there was no select board meeting yesterday. They canceled their early one this month, so they're meeting again in, 13 days? Trying to think about this slide, like the next steps here. This is the same one I presented last time. I'm just trying to think, like, this is what I was thinking of next steps when I presented this 2 weeks ago. Because, like, I feel like we should be talking about scenarios with the select board that we would be supportive of, assuming that, knowing that we don't know the true financial costs, knowing that we don't know the true financial constraints. And that's why I would think that we would want to look at, like, scenarios. So build, buy, borrow, or something, you know, like, look at a couple different scenarios, depending on what the financial constraints are. And just start having a dialogue on a framework of what makes sense as we wait to get better financial information. That's what I think we should be doing. Any other opinions on, anybody, thoughts on that? So they don't meet again for another 2 weeks, but we have a liaison here that can communicate that to them, that would be something that we would want to have a conversation with their board about. Roland?
So,
Scott?
let Craig go first.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, at our next meeting 2 weeks from now, how far along on this path are we likely to be? And I ask that question because 2 nights later, the DPW Building Committee will be meeting for the first time since town meeting. And, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how far along we will be before I have to go to that DPW building meeting.
I don't think we're going to have any definitive answer, but I think having dialogue and starting a conversation is a step in the right direction. But just hearing what people are saying I think the resonating theme from the Finance Committee is that we would like to look at this as a decoupled project and then see if it holds water as decoupled, and look at solutions for the staff, and also explore existing real estate and just to understand what other options are. Because that doesn't require any spend, it's just finding out if property's available and what the expected cost is, so.
Fair enough. Then if you can go back a slide. One of the things that I think we can do to get us where we want to go is the initial bullet point, the original plan. Even the DPW building committee isn't trying to go back to the $48 million proposal. Nobody is. So I think we can knock that off the list. And unless some others not previously discussed surface in the next 2 weeks, we can probably, narrow our field. And the more we narrow the field to a reasonable number, the more likely we are to move that conversation in a positive direction.
Yeah, when you say number, are you saying that we're going to tell the select board you can spend 20 million, 30 million, 80 million, 100 million? I don't think that we're going to be in any position to quote numbers because we don't know what anything costs. And until, what I don't want to have happen is what happened last year, is that we had a plan presented, and there's a lot of history there, but we had a plan presented that we didn't think was in the best was the best use of taxpayer funds. I would like to think that when there's money spent on getting a plan design, that we discuss some scenarios at a high level and try to figure out something that makes sense to step forward with some type of design.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
It is entirely probable that at early ALG meetings, you're going to be approached, you and Roland are going to be approached saying, what's your number? And that's not a great position to be in. But going back and saying, well, we don't know what things cost, leaves the door open to them running roughshod over whatever our best laid plans are. I think taking a look at what Weston and Sampson did in Yarmouth, take that number, run it out for inflation if you want. Take the 2013 number and get the modern day cost. Take the number of what the new Nagog auto dealership, which is pretty similar to a DPW building, but not exact. I don't want to say that it's exactly the same. I'm not going to call them apples and apples. And figure out what the $36,000 number is, 36,000 square foot number is. And that gives you a much better starting point, because I fear, and again, I hate to be political, but if you go and say, we don't have the resources to get a cost estimate for this, then they're going to say, well, we need this, 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 and this, and we're going to tell you what you can spend, what it's going to cost us. So I think we'd be better off to say, we're looking in the range of $10 million, not $40 million, or we're looking in the range of 12. And I think it is incumbent upon us in the next meeting or two to get the number from the new building, to run the number of what the 2013 plan was, and to say, that is what we're thinking of. Can you build us the best thing to meet your needs with this amount of money? Because that's what we feel is reasonable. Sorry to interrupt.
Add one thing. I don't disagree with what you said, but I still feel like the other and most important data point there is the equipment study. Because we're building buildings around equipment, and I don't know if we have not enough equipment, or we have 18
17 dump trucks.
and we need 2.
Right, you're absolutely right,
It's
sir.
like, because we could find out, because one of the public speakers when we were talking, when this was going through, came up and said, well, the mistake we made 30 years ago was that we didn't build the building large enough. So I just want to confirm that whatever is being built can handle the existing equipment.
And then we
can
just
handle-
take, and then we just take those number of
Yeah.
vehicles and go look at Yarmouth.
Yes,
And
exactly.
look at,
Yeah.
not Maynard because they're tiny, but look at a bunch of other towns
Yeah.
around here and make sure that it's done.
All right, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to get smart, we need to get smart quick. And we don't have the resources and things like that. So like, how can we do that? Why are we not, Greg, can you go and go to Yarmouth and take some pictures, get some facts? Or maybe even we invite some of these, what we think are like the archetypes of towns that we, hypothesize are the right fit, and
Yeah.
invite them to come talk to us in the next meeting or
As
two.
it
And
turns out-
it can be virtual as well, and position it as like, we need your help, and get this out in the open. Like, I'm sure someone there will be happy to share the experience, and that's probably a relatively low-cost way to get some firsthand information.
Yeah, I have taken photos, and one of them is in the slide deck that I presented tonight. And the DPW director that I talked to, we could invite him to answer questions via Zoom. One of the things that he told me that I mentioned 2 weeks ago that is worth thinking about is that they held their town meeting before they held their debt exclusion vote. And in answer to Roland's question from, I think, that meeting, yes, they had an override the previous year. So some of those details would come out in that conversation.
Okay, well, let's get the facts, and to the equipment thing, like, I mean, I would be surprised if there are not some at least relevant, studies out there that we could, look at, find on Google Scholar or some other like way that just says like, all right, like, at least thumbnail it here on, if that's like
It's like
a.
a 10-minute drill.
Oh, okay, well, then that's even.
I'm just
but-
asking for someone to say, I need 15 trucks, 18 of these, 6 of these.
well,
I would
but-
think that that's an easy thing to do.
Fair, but if we're not getting the information, then let's,
It would be less accurate by making assumptions based on other towns, on what our town needs, because every town's got different streets, different service standards. mean,
I
it's
can't
like
be
it-
that I mean, I would push back on that. Like, it can't be like a town with X amount of road miles, X amount of residential to commercial, like, I think we're probably smart enough to make a fairly educated guess. If we're a couple vehicles off here and there, but here's like, also my other comment here is, people always react to, like, if we're not getting this information, I think we make a best guess and like get it out in the public and open. And I guarantee you someone, if we're not moving towards the right path, like, that'll elicit an answer, because people always love something to react to versus coming up with an answer on their own. And so I think there's like some, low resource, i.e. low cost ways that we could probably get some of this information that will inform the number as Jason called it.
Go ahead, Ron.
I guess the question for the committee is, do we need to have another joint meeting with the select board on this?
Well, I like that idea.
I don't know if
I would
that would-
support that.
Would hammer anything out different than last time. Steve, you mentioned the old Saab dealer, but there's also the old Toyota dealer that's sitting on 2A.
Yeah.
That's vacant, you know, you could theoretically, you know, and again, as you said, it has offices in there, right? It has bathrooms.
It's not vacant. There's an auto body shop in the back.
Well, okay, in the back, but
Well, I'm just saying that that's part of the garage space and everything. It's not.
well, that's, I think the auto body is a separate building way in the back. Yeah. So, you know, my point is, there's other alternatives in town. And again, you don't need to have the town engineer and all the ancillary office staff in that building. It's, you know, and you tell me, oh, you need synergy and this and that. Well, somebody's out on a road crew and they have a question for the town engineer. They're not going to send somebody all the way back over to the DPW building to go back out to the road crew. Because then there's something lost in translation. Or have if the town engineer has to go to the road crew, it doesn't matter where they are in town, they can still get there. So, you know, that's the type of things that we really need to figure the best, most efficient way to run the organization. And you know, you asked me what my number is today, yeah, it's 12 million. I mean, you know, is that realistic? I don't know. I don't know, I forget what Greg said the cost for Yarmouth was back in what year that was. You could take the Yarmouth one, and as we said, just add a cost factor onto that every year for the last how many years there's been, and then you come up with a value. You know, the price hasn't gone up 40% in 1 year, we know that. So it needs a lot more work than and not getting the information that we've asked for well over a month ago, maybe closer to 2 months now, is, in my opinion, is not acceptable. Because if I did that at my work and my boss asked for something, I didn't give him the data.
Yeah, well,
You know.
well, let me quick answer to your question. It was $16.2 million in 2021. And again, Weston and Sampson did the construction, or did the design.
And how big was
The
what
architect.
was the square foot?
16.2.
No, what was the square foot of the building?
Pardon?
What was the size of the building?
Sure, it was, 37,990 square feet. 37990. Ours was 43,056.
I can go to
So
38.
it was about 6,000 square feet smaller.
Thank you.
Greg, in that building, did they have all the staff in the building, or is it just the equipment?
They have the staff in the building. I went into the building to talk to the DPW director. It's a very nice building. And I did not inspect the storage area for the vehicles, however. So, you know, it's the next town over. That would be easy to do and get some photos.
Do you know if it was a green building as well?
Not there. They have a separate, they're not near town hall, and that effort is over at their town hall.
I was in Hingham's DPW. I had to stop in and get a dump past my father's vehicle. And there was 2, 3 staff maybe there. Big building with the trucks were stored. That's pretty much it. And it wasn't green, I'll tell you that. Probably brick on the outside on where the offices are, and the rest was a metal storage facility, you know. And it worked for them. So they have different needs than we do, I get that. There's some main roads running through their town. And they have a harbor that we don't have to deal with, so they have to deal with some other storm-related issues. But, you know, and the one before that was older than old. It was probably built in the 1920s. But they make it work, and that's kind of my point.
Jason?
Mr. Chairman, who are you waiting on for this report of the facilities needs? Is this sitting on the town manager's desk? Is this on the assistant town manager's desk? Or is this on the director of the DPW's desk? Or do you not know?
I have emailed people. My intention is to request it in person again, but in person at the select board meeting. but since the meeting was canceled last night, the only opportunity I have, I will email again, and I will request in person if I don't have any results between my email and the next select board meeting. I don't know how else to ask.
Thank you.
So the Collins Center, EMS that Mary Ann mentioned, in talking about her replacement, we also used them to develop the template for the 10-year town capital CIP plan. They also have something called a fleet evaluation tool, which they performed for several towns in anticipation of building a DPW building. Kind of getting the data first before you decide on the size of the building. That's a possibility. They may have data that can be accessed. As far as Jason's point about ALG and you being asked for a number, I'd say, based on last year's ALG, that we as a committee have a lot of thought to do about participating in ALG before you get any meetings off the ground. As far as I'm concerned, the system broke. The Board of Selectmen didn't do the plan we asked for. They then published their plan as the joint plan of the full ALG, even though we asked them not to. So my opinion, we have a long way to go before I'd be willing to talk numbers about a DPW. I think the ground rules are going to have to be changed.
Christie?
I think that's an interesting discussion to be had. I'd like to veer back just to our discussion about the DPW. I logically would like to have the people separate from the garage, because then you can adjust each as needs change. If it makes, I mean, maybe just stick them on opposite ends of the building, and you can grow in one direction when you need room for more people, and you can grow in the other direction when you need room for more vehicles. At a minimum, I'd love some sort of growth plan. I recognize the idea that maybe we built too small of a building before, maybe we just stayed in it too long, but some idea of how to grow forward would be really helpful. And I don't believe that the answer is build a much larger building than we have right now. I think it's more of a build a right-sized building for now with the understanding of how long it will last us and how to add on to it to increase usability.
Roland?
So I thought about that at one point too, build it so you can take care of it. That's why I said the wash bay doesn't need to be built now, right? But if you put the wash bay at the end and you go, oh, in 15 years, we need a little larger, we need another 5,000 square feet. Well, now you have the wash bay in the way. Now what do you do, right? So I think that has to somehow get addressed. But that would come out in the design, I would hope. But I like that idea of, build it so you can grow if you need to. Or the other way is, maybe you can shrink, because AI is going to take everybody's job and plow the roads for us, the robo trucks. So, yeah, I like that build it the right size now, but also note that this building is flexible in terms that we can, if we had to, add to it if we needed to in the future.
That's kind of why I feel like if anything were to be built, like a structure for just the staff could, like, I see that as, like, that could be built in an area where it's got room for growth. It's not going to interfere with the vehicle storage, and it could be built fast. It could be built fast because it won't interfere with anything. And then if you get all the people in there, then it gives you an opportunity to, do what you're saying, like, look at everything else later and figure out what's needed, how to build it, allow for growth. Yeah, I like the concept of looking at, like, if you look at the staff separately, you look at the building storage separately, and and show the pros and cons and everything about both sides and solutions and options. I think that's what the taxpayers need to see.
These is two separate issues, really, when you really boil it down.
And maybe the final answer is everything has to be glued together. But at least if you take that path, you can prove it. If you just go to the final, solution, there's no paper trail to say, we looked at all these things for staff and none of them work.
Scott?
Greg?
Yeah, one other just data point. In the 2013 Space Needs Plan, one of the statements that I did not mention, but I'd like to call attention to now, is that they estimated that they had 21,000 usable square feet of space in 2013 for the DPW. And they assumed that that would be sufficient through the year 2033, the next 20 years. So one of the things that has happened over the last 15 years is we've gone from 21,000 square feet was acceptable, 12 years ago, and now all of a sudden we're double that, literally double that. And why, what happened? Why is all the new space, what's it needed for?
Thank you for that data point, Greg. That's something I wasn't aware of, but thank you for bringing that to everybody's attention. Unless there's any other questions on this, I want to put this to rest. And is there any liaison reports? No. I still have my open items, which I mentioned. Next meeting, July 22nd. And then we have 2 meetings in August with intern presentations. And then we go on to September. Any questions on anything at this point before I go to my next slide?
The July 22nd meeting, is it here, or do you have a room lined up?
It is here.
Great, thank you.
Sorry about having a 22nd meeting, but I think that's a good time to have a meeting because select board meets the day before. So rather than us alternating days off in the month of July and then not coordinating till August, we'll at least coordinate in the month of July. Christie?
I am most likely traveling then. Do you need to check if we have enough people?
I probably do. Alex said he would be at our next meeting. Is anybody else not going to be here on the 22nd?
I plan to attend the July 22 meeting in person. I'll be there.
Okay. We'll be graced by your presence. All right, thank you. I'm going to move on to the most, important, there's my thank you slide. Thank you. With the nice picture of the plow from downstairs. Fred?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Who seconded?
Jason.
It's a raise. All those in favor of adjourning the Finance Committee meeting?
Aye.
All right.
The Finance Committee has,
Don't we do a roll call vote because it's...
all right, we have to do a roll call vote, sorry. Jason?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Corinne?
Aye.
Roland?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Christie?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.